because I have the first edition
Yeah.
on kind of a matte finish paper,
Right.
And this is just too slick.
Well, you know, I always found him handsome. You
Yeah.
know, personally.
Yeah.
You know, I have weird taste. I always
Yeah.
thought that the handsomest guy in Hollywood was Boris Karloff as the monster,
Mhm.
as Frankenstein monster.
Mhm.
That, to me, that was the epitome. But Shemp, you know, I think he was voted ugliest guy in Hollywood. One of the reasons I love him, you know, for that distinction. But I always found him handsome. He's a handsome man. All the Three Stooges are handsome.
No, but if I may just strike a personal chord for a moment. This was what introduced me to your work, was the first edition of this book. Because I'll confess I did not read Screw magazine, so I did not.
Nobody read Screw magazine.
That's true.
Stopped.
But I saw this cover. I said, I got to have this. This is my kind of, you know, obviously this is my kind of book. And then as I went through the collection and saw these homages to Tor Johnson and Joe Besser and Joe Franklin and all the other people who I cherished, you know, from my adolescence onward, I felt we were kindred spirits. And I think most people seem to respond to your work that same way. When did you, what was the first kind of feedback you got from this stuff?
Well, first, let me preface this by saying I didn't read Screw magazine either. You know, I did work for it, but you know, it was like nobody would publish my work except for Screw magazine and you know publications like that because of my particular obsessions. But the first feedback I got, the first meaningful feedback was actually a letter from you praising the work, and I thought someone like Leonard Maltin would just never be aware of what I did. This is like late '80s, I think. Like, how would he even be aware of what I was doing, or what I was up to? I was such a wise guy, and taking these like iconic characters and doing horrible things with them, and you know, going too far, I thought. But then I got this letter from you, and I said, well, maybe I'm on the right track after all. You know, somehow. You know, if Leonard Maltin, who I grew up admiring, watching on Joe Franklin, admires my work, maybe I'm doing something right. So.
Well, that's the most flattering thing anyone has said to me today. Thank you very much. Well, I still feel when I read your like Night Out with Fred Mertz and all of that, I'm embarrassed that I'm laughing. You know, I'm just square enough that you are going too far, and yet you're making me laugh.
Well,
so
that's most important.
You
know, some of those scripts, some of the brilliant scripts that my brother wrote, you know, they were like they worked to get my work published early on, you know, rather than just doing, you know, drawing faces and caricatures and stuff. Those comic strips like resonated with a lot of people. Those early comics. Andy Griffith, the black guy arriving in Mayberry, was the first comic we ever did. Actually, you know, it was like, you know, it was just like it just seemed like a natural piece. That show that ran for 8 years, you never really saw a black person on there, and it took place in the South in the '60s, and it's like, you know, something's missing here, so we just had to address that. And then, you know, and then the question of Fred Mertz is like, what happens late at night with Fred Mertz? It's like, you know, what happens when the cameras go down? It's like, so we follow him around the city, and you know, it's like obviously he's a pimp, and an arsonist, and it gets worse from there.
I must say, I equally admire your portrait of New York elevator men, and whether that resonates with non-New Yorkers, or if it's one of those things that somebody said, you know, a long time ago, that somehow this curious phenomenon that the more specific you are about something, the more universal it becomes. So maybe you don't have to have grown up in the city encountering elevator men and doormen to appreciate those faces, but
it's
they
possible.
sure
You know, it could have been maitre d's or you know, guys who did your laundry. You know, we chose elevator men, or I chose elevator men, my portraits, just because I did grow up with them and we knew them by name. It's like we would talk to them, and also the fact that they were just basically replaced by buttons. You know, it's like these men who like slaved their entire lives in elevators, going up and down. You know, were dedicated to the job, and they were just replaced by buttons. So it was my tribute to them to like portray them. Like, just don't forget that, because they don't exist anymore in New York. They're still doormen, but you know.
Not the same as before.
No, it's a different world, as you know. But there's no more elevator men that I know of. You know, maybe in freight elevators they're still there, but I haven't researched it that thoroughly. The guys I knew, John and Jimmy and Chappie and Libby, they're all gone. You know.
Now, where did you grow up exactly?
Well, like you in Long Island, and then we moved
Jersey,
to...
actually.
Okay, well, unlike you, Long Island.
And accuracy is held in very high esteem this afternoon.
And then my parents got sick of Long Island, and so we moved to Manhattan when I was about 12.
And where in Manhattan?
The El Dorado, 300 Central Park West, one floor below Faye Dunaway and Peter Wolf. To be specific.
Yeah.
Martin Bolson was also upstairs, and Nicole Williamson was downstairs, and then Richard Dreyfuss moved in. I can go on and on.
And how did you process that at that time?
I liked it because I had access to, you know, the movie theaters and cinemabilia on 13th Street. That's the stuff that was most important. Also, getting back to Leonard, your classes at the New School, which I went to, you know, on a weekly basis for a while, you know, along with some friends. So things like that I could never get on Long Island, you know. But I was basically, I've talked about this before. When I was a little kid, I was a weird kid because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Like when I was like 7, it was like basically it was said I wanted to just watch TV with my guinea pig and draw. That's basically it. So I wanted to just watch the Three Stooges and Laurel and Hardy and Superman and Soupy Sales and Clay Cole and Schiller Theater and Popeye and just draw and be left alone. And that's what I still do, basically. Nothing much has changed since then. But again, you know, also Joe Franklin. The first time I saw you, I think you were about 17, was on the Joe Franklin show, of course.
Of course, it's everybody's.
Yeah, I've never been on the show. You know, of course, he sued me for $40 million, and we're now friends. But I was never actually invited on the show.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah,
You missed a
it's
great
It's a big regret. But now I go to his office. You know, I'm like the liaison to Joe's office, which is, you know, like an episode of Hoarders. You've seen the photos if you're on Facebook.
Yeah. Just take a moment and explain. Is there anyone who doesn't know who Joe Franklin is? Because
Not this crowd. Yeah, not this crowd.
If you had to describe that office, and I'm asking you to do so, how would you describe that office?
Yeah, to experience it, you have to experience it, but it's like an episode of Hoarders or the Collier Brothers, where you basically have to carve your way through. Just to walk in the office, you have to carve your way through all the debris and garbage that's been compiled over the years. He doesn't throw anything out. There's like letters from like the electric company from like 15 years ago, you know, stacked up. Everything he gets FedEx, unopened FedEx packages he gets. So if anybody sends him something, FedEx, your book or whatnot, he's not going to open it, but he'll keep the package. Just stacked high. And the thing is, it's so stacked so high that it's almost toppling over. Like if you touch anything, it's about to topple over onto your head. It's sort of like, you know, the old lady in Great Expectations. He just sits there at his desk, he picks up the phone all day long.
And does he still have other people pick up the phone for him? That was one of his great...
Yeah, he does. He has a couple of friends.
He'd say to whoever was standing there, take that call. and not knowing who was calling, and sometimes not knowing terribly well who he was telling to answer the call.
Right.
But it didn't much matter.
He would have someone pick up the phone, and then the person would repeat the name. Oh, okay. Tell them call me next Tuesday.
Call me next Tuesday.
Call me next Tuesday at 4 o'clock, and I'll have good news for them. And that's what he still does. He sits there. It's just, you know, on 43rd Street, west of 8th Avenue. That's what he's still doing. He sits there on the phone all day, and the phone rings all day. I was just like staring at him. You know, it's like fascinating to me. And to friends I brought up, including Craig Bierko, who was just like, you know, it was like a dream come true for him.
I'm sorry that he's still not on TV, because it would be wonderful for you to go on the show.
He's on the Bloomberg Radio Network, 20 million listeners. 20 million listeners. And he has also 125 Joe Franklin restaurants across the country.
125?
That's what he claims. Yeah. There's not one, of course. There was one on 43rd Street.
Yes, Joe Franklin's Memory Lane Restaurant.
The Board of Health.
All the food was 40 years old.
But he was there. He actually was there in the restaurant in his trench coat to make it seem like he had to leave. You know, at all. Just want to stop by and say hi. But the New York Times wrote about it, and they said he would have that trench coat on, saying goodbye to people for several hours. He never left, but he had to be leaving.
The great thing, if you were an author and you went on Joe's show, no matter whether you were an unknown author or a well-known author, and he had both, that was the thing. See, it wasn't just, I mean, cable access TV has unknowns and wannabes.